So, thank you, Nilamadu Prabhu, for speaking so highly of me, and now I have to live with that, live up to it. And oftentimes I'm thinking that I'm actually nothing special because, I haven't even finished my degree, college dropout. And so, no material, no spiritual qualification, and I'm thinking that the only value of my life is that, all of you could look at me and think, if this guy can travel the world and preach Krishna consciousness, what I could do, right? So, because you're way more qualified than myself, so hopefully that will serve as a proof that Krishna consciousness is available for anyone. Anyone can practice that great spiritual science. So today we will speak on the subject connected to the first day of Bhishma Panchaka. Srila Prabhupada described Kartik month as spiritual sail. So everything of a great value you can easily get this month from Radha Madhava. They are very, very merciful. This month is the month of Srimati Radharani, because Kartika Devi is another name of Srimati Radharani. And of course, Damodar we're celebrating. So it has double name this month, month of Kartik, month of Damodar. And especially these last 5 days, very powerful. And of course they are connected to Bhishmadev. The last 5 days of his presence on this planet. He is preparing for departure. And of course his very powerful meditation on the Supreme Lord. And we will read from Bhagavad Gita, because Bhishmadev is a symbol of sacrifice, and sacrifice is the first and foremost item which is highlighted in Bhagavad Gita. And before that, we'll traditionally sing Jaya Radha Madhava, glorifying Radha Madhava. You have everything nicely arranged in this temple. Radha Madhava as the main deities, Nila Madhav Prabhu as your temple president, and of course the word Madhava, right? That the primary meaning of the name is Krishna, who is husband of the goddess of fortune. So we can see it's. I think this is the most beautiful and prosperous temple I've seen, at least in America. So it's my great pleasure and honor to be here with all of you. And of course, it all didn't just drop from the sky. It's been the mature fruit of all your sacrifices. So I'm very confident that Srila Prabhupada would be very, very happy with all your services.
Very hard working.
I'm sure all of you are doing your hard work, sharing the responsibility. So, since we have very accomplished musicians and kirtaniyas, if someone could follow Prabhupada disciple, very expert harmonium player. someone could follow harmonium also. Thank you. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Gopi Dana Bala Bhav Girivara Bhagi Jai Gopi Dana Bala Bhav Girivara Bhagi Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana Yamuna Tira Ganachare Yamuna Tira Ganachare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Shri Radha Madhava ki jai Bhakti Rasayana Swami Prabhupada ki jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, all glories to the assembled devotees, Nitai Gaur Premanande. Om Agyantinarandasya Ginandana Shalokaya Chaksharam Meditam Yana Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadam Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vanchikalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Подай Махапрема, Пурвабибур, Нирмая Кшатеда Мушукурушавам, Тевна, Садаса Садасатмака, Илам Кришиш Sabhagavan Vacham Sime. So we will read from the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, entitled Karma Yoga, text number 16. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Evam pravartitam chakram anuvartayati haya aghayurindriyara momokham partha sajivati. My dear Arjuna, one who does not follow in human life the cycle of sacrifice thus established by the Vedas certainly leads a life full of sin. Living only for the satisfaction of the senses, such a person lives in vain. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Mammonist philosophy of work very hard and enjoy sense gratification is condemned herein by the Lord. Therefore, for those who want to enjoy this material world, the above mentioned cycle of performing yajnas is absolutely necessary. One who does not follow such regulations is living a very risky life, being condemned more and more. By nature's law, the human form of life is specifically meant for self-realization in either of the three ways, namely Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, or Bhakti Yoga. There is no necessity of rigidly following the performances of the prescribed yajnas for the transcendentalists who are above vice and virtue, but those who are engaged in sense gratification require purification by the above mentioned cycle of yajna performances. There are different kinds of activities. Those who are not Krishna conscious are certainly engaged in sensory consciousness. Therefore, they need to execute pious work. The yajna system is planned in such a way that sensory conscious persons may satisfy their desires without becoming entangled in the reaction of sense gratificatory work. The prosperity of the world depends not on our own efforts, but on the background arrangement of the Supreme Lord, directly carried out by the demigods. Therefore, the yajnas are directly aimed at the particular demigods mentioned in the Vedas. Indirectly, it is the practice of Krishna consciousness, because when one masters the performance of yajnas, one is sure to become Krishna conscious. But if by performing yajnas one does not become Krishna conscious, such principles are counted as only moral codes. One should not therefore limit his progress only to the point of moral codes, but should transcend them to attain Krishna consciousness. Evam pravartitam chakram nanuvartayati haya ghayurindriyarmo mokham parthasa jivati. My dear Arjuna, one who does not follow in human life the cycle of sacrifice, thus established by the Vedas, certainly leads a life full of sin, living only for the satisfaction of the senses. Such a person lives in vain. So, we've decided to discuss this topic because Bhishmadev is the symbol of sacrifice. Sometimes we might wonder that Bhishmadev, he was fighting against Krishna on the side of the enemies of Kauravas, and there were so many devotees on the other side, and yet Bhishmadev is Mahajan, and all those who were fighting on Krishna's side, they are not listed as such, right? Because and Mahajan means great devotee, not just on the level of this planet, but on universal level. It's very interesting that Srila Prabhupada would oftentimes say that Krishna consciousness is not another religion, right? But it is spiritual science. And we can see that all the religions, they are, just limiting themselves with this little planet, right? There are some vague descriptions. There is some kind of heaven somewhere, some kind of hell somewhere. But we can see Sanatan Dharma is giving such a vivid description, like you take 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the entire universe is described. What kind of planets are there, how many heavenly planets, what's happening there, what kind of hells are there, 21 types of hell. What kind of sinful people go to which kind of hell, everything is so elaborately described. So we can see Sanatan Dharma gives us very broad perspective on things. right? So that's why it says that what's the difference between Sanatan Dharma and any religion? Because any religion was created by humans, right? Of course, through some God's representative, but religions were appearing at some point in human history and were meant for some particular type of people, right? But Sanatan Dharma is eternal. It was given since the dawn of creation, right? We understand. Krishna gave it to Lord Brahma, then Lord Brahma spread it all over the universe. This spiritual knowledge and spiritual practices. So, and Sanatan Dharma was not created in human history, and so it will never end, right? And there are 12 Mahajans, as they are described by Yamaraj himself. Well, how does it start? Anyone remembers? The Sanskrit slipped out of my mind. Pralada Janaka Bhishma Balirvayasaki. Swayambhu Narada Shambhu Kumara Kapilo Manu. Pralada Janaka Bhishma Palir Vayasaki Vayam. So, Swayambhu, self-born Lord Brahma, right? Because Lord Brahma didn't have material mother and father, so he appeared directly from the Supreme Lord. Narad Muni, his celebrated son, and Shambhu, Lord Shiva, Kumara, referring to Kumara, specifically Sanat Kumar, Acharyas are saying, and Kapiladev, even though he is counted as avatar, but he is Shakti-Desh avatar, specially empowered incarnation, so he is counted as Mahajan. Manu, specifically referring to Swayambhu Manu. Prahlad Maharaj, Janaka Maharaj, Bhishmadev, Bali Maharaj, Vyasaki, the son of Vyasadeva, Shukadev Goswami, and then very humbly, at the very end, Yamaraj says Vayam. We were also added to that list. So these are the 12 greatest devotees on universal scale. And so Bhishmadev comes in that list. Is it not surprising that the enemy of the Lord counted as such a great devotee? So anyone has any idea how that happened? How is that Bhishmadev is counted there, but Yudhishthira Maharaj and no other Pandavas, no other wonderful devotees who were fighting on Krishna's side, they were not counted in that list, but Bhishmadev is counted. Because whole life of Bhishmadev is dedicated to sacrifice. And sacrifice means sacrificing our personal interests for greater cause. And it is very interesting that even in regular human history, that those people who sacrifice their interests for greater cause, they are considered to be great human beings, right? But those who live for their selfish, narrow interests, in the long run, they're not even considered to be proper human beings. That's kind of more animal life, right? Because it's animal consciousness, just very narrow, only concerning about oneself. And so Bhishmadev became the emblem of that sacrifice, because he sacrificed so many things in his life for the benefit of others, right? When he was young, of course, great personality. He was not even a regular human, right? Because his mother was Ganga Devi, so he was known as Gangaputra, son of Ganga. So he was half demigod, having divine origin. And of course Ganga is a great devotee of the Supreme Lord. And sons, they often inherit qualities of mother, right? In the same way as daughters inherit qualities of father, so sons inherit qualities of mother. And his whole life was focused on what can I do to serve the Supreme Lord and serve everybody else and sacrifice my own interests. So his first sacrifice, which earned him this name Bhishmadev, came when he decided to sacrifice his not only his privilege to become the heir of the Hastinapur, he become the next king, but he also sacrificed even his children could become also could inherit the throne of Hastinapur. But he sacrificed even that by giving this terrific or terrible vow to never get married, to stay brahmachari his whole life. So lifelong brahmachari, which is considered to be brihat vrat, right? Great vow, great austerity. And especially for the king or for the prince, because if an ordinary man doesn't have children, especially son, that could be a problem, right? But for the king, or to never have any progeny, that's a big problem, because kings, they carry responsibility for the entire kingdom. And so if there are no sons, there is no one to take over. There is no one to look after all the millions of people in the kingdom. So, but Bhishmadev sacrificed this right, not only to become the next king, but he even promised not to get married. And why? Because Satyavati's father, he was insisting that Satyavati's children should be next, should inherit the throne of Hastinapur. And Bhishmadev was wondering, why are you so insistent on that? And then he said, because in her astrological chart it's stated that her children are supposed to inherit the throne of Hastinapur. And then Bhishmadev said, if it is in her chart, that means it is willed from above, and I will never go against that, so I promise that I'll never get married and I'll never have children. And so those who know his life, it's constant sacrifice. And the most interesting thing, because he gave that promise, even though he would never be a king, but he would always be the guardian of the throne of Hastinapur. And he would always protect the Simhasana. And he was bound by this promise, as Kshatriyas, if they give their word of honor, they will never break it, right? that they would rather die than break their word. So truthfulness, as we know, is the last pillar of Dharma, of spiritual advancement. And so Bhishmadev was truthful till the very end. And even though he realized quite early that yes, Krishna is the Supreme Lord, and there is no chance of winning in that battle, but because he was bound by his promise, he had to fight with his beloved grandchildren, Pandavas. And ultimately he had to sacrifice. He was willingly sacrificing his life. And actually, because his whole life, he suffered so much because he had to be on the wrong side by the will of providence, actually by the plan of the Lord. We can understand that Kauravas would never, and of course the Kauravas, they attracted, if you know Mahabharata, they've attracted all the demoniac forces, right? Not only from this planet, but from the whole universe. And of course Krishna's mission was to destroy the demoniac forces. This is why he appeared on this earth. And killing demons since his childhood. Some people might say, very interesting God you are worshipping, right? From his childhood, stealing, like stealing butter, right? Damodar, why he became Damodar? Why mother bound him? Because he was stealing butter, makanchur. So, yeah, very interesting. Born in prison house, childhood spent in stealing, youth spent in killing. I suppose if you preach to the prison inmates, they would be able to relate to Krishna very nicely. You can tell them, you're in prison now, but at least you were not born in prison, but Krishna was born in prison. So, but yeah, of course, Krishna is doing everything for everybody's benefit, whether it is stealing or killing. So Krishna is absolute. Even such activities become beneficial for everybody. But of course, not everyone can understand that. That's why Krishna consciousness is only for those who are most advanced, only for those who are most intelligent. And so, yes, Bhishmadev became that attraction point that all these demons, they were counting on Bhishmadev to protect and support them. And that's why they dared to come and fight on Kurukshetra. And of course, this was part of Krishna's plan, because he was killing demons one by one. But then he realized that there are too many of them. And so he has to go wholesale. And so the entire Mahabharata plot was to bring all these demons together and finish them, right? And accomplish his mission of destroying the demoniac forces which were trampling the earth and burning the earth. And so, yes, Bhishmadev became that hope for them. But then, even though he was participating in the plan of the Supreme Lord, but we can only imagine how much pain he had to bear, that he had to support all these people who were demoniac. And then this last 5 days of Kartik, we understand that Bhishmadev spent lying on the bed of arrows and waiting for the opportune moment to depart to the spiritual world. And as Bhagavatam describes, it happened in the presence of the Supreme Lord himself. Krishna personally came to Bhishmadev, and Bhishmadev glorified him as the 9th chapter of the first canto described, and gave final instructions. It's very interesting. It says that Yudhishthir was so heartbroken after the Kurukshetra battle that he could not be consoled by anyone. And amazingly enough, even Krishna, he was preaching to Yudhishthir Maharaj, but he could not be consoled even by Krishna. And it's quite amazing how the Supreme Lord can be incapable of doing something, right? How his words didn't have any effect on Yudhishthir Maharaj. He continued lamenting. But then Srila Prabhupada and our acharyas are explaining in the purport that externally Krishna was telling Krishna was telling Maharaj Yudhishthir that, you should not lament about all the losses after the battle. But from inside of his heart, Krishna was telling Maharaj Yudhishthir, don't listen to me. Continue lamenting. And then, why Krishna was doing this, very interesting, right? From outside he was preaching to him, and from inside he didn't allow him to, be consoled. Jai Shri Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai, Shri Shri Jagannath Madhava Subhadra Mai, Shri Shri Gaura Ki Jai. And the main reason for that was that Krishna wanted Bhishmadev to explain to Maharaj Yudhishthir the importance of Dharma and pacify him. And so this is very interesting feature of the Supreme Lord. He wants his devotees to accomplish something which even he does not do, right? It's like Srila Prabhupada one time was asked, if Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Lord and he wanted to spread Krishna consciousness all over the planet, then why he didn't do that? Why he limited himself just to some parts of India? And Srila Prabhupada was very happy with this question. He stopped, he looked at the devotee and he said, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu haven't done that because he wanted me to do that. So, and he explains that yes, this is Krishna's nature. He wants his devotees to be greater than him. He doesn't do certain things because he wants his devotees to do that. It's kind of natural, right? That any father wants his son to be better than him, to be more accomplished than him. And so, because Krishna is everybody's father, and devotees are very dear to Krishna, so he wants them to do something which even he doesn't do. But yes, for Bhishmadev it was great relief when he finally was pierced by the arrows, primarily Arjuna's arrows, and he was waiting for the opportune moment to leave his body. He was immortal. He could choose when he wanted to die himself. He could live even in the body which was completely bereft of blood, right? So he could still maintain his life in such a body, practically a lifeless body. And we can only imagine, it's hard to imagine how much pain he had to endure, physical pain. But actually it was a great pleasure for him. because his internal pain, his mental pain, spiritual pain was over, right? That finally he removed himself from the path of victory for the Pandavas. And it's very interesting, this episode in Mahabharata when Arjuna comes to Bhishma Deva and he's asking, how can we attain victory? You blessed us to be victorious. So how can we achieve victory if you are fighting so powerfully? And Bhishma Deva said, it's very clear. You have to remove me from your path. You have to kill me. And when they were asking how it is possible to kill you if you are immortal, no one can face you in the fight. So he said, just put Shikandin in front and fight, shoot arrows at me from behind his back, and I will not resist. So in this way you can kill me. So he himself told Arjuna how to kill him. And it's very, of course, painful episode in Mahabharata when Arjuna is crying tears because he loved Bhishma Deva so much, because he was taking care of them so nicely and always supporting, and he had to kill his his grandfather and his well-wisher. So Arjuna is suffering, shooting arrows on Bhishma Deva, and Bhishma Deva is praising Arjuna. He says, yeah, I know, I can see that this arrow is coming from Arjuna. Like that. So, yes, his whole life was such a great symbol of sacrifice. It's very interesting how he also glorifies gopis of Vrindavan in the 9th chapter of the 1st canto. And of course, gopis of Vrindavan, they have this mood of self-sacrifice. Ashlishiva padaratam pinashtamam adarshanam marmahatam karotava yatha tathava vitatavam patumat prananatastu seva naparaha. That I know no one as my Lord except Krishna, and he shall remain so, even if he roughly embraces me or breaks my heart by not appearing before me. So gopis, and of course especially Srimati Radharani, they are ready to go through any pain, through any losses, as long as Krishna is pleased. So that's why gopis are the greatest devotees. And Bhishma Dev's mood was very similar. So he was ready to go through any pain in his life. Lifelong pain, can you imagine what it means? But just because he knew that this is what destined by the Lord wanted him to do that. So he was going through that. And as we know, no pain, no gain. And that's why we want to get the blessing of Bhishma Deva for these last days of Kartik, meditating on his sacrifice and on his Krishna consciousness, which is very similar to gopis' consciousness, and develop that mood ourselves. Gopi Bhav, right? Some people want to develop the mood of gopis. But what is this mood? Srila Prabhupada. He sacrificed Vrindavan Dham. For what? For going to America. Of course, for some people it's dream coming true, right? Coming to America. But for Srila Prabhupada, living in the house of people who were smoking in his face, using refrigerator full of meat, and bearing people who were walking into his room with their street boots on, and many other things. People had no idea what is even culture, what to speak of Krishna consciousness. And even us, can we imagine ourselves in such a condition when we have to preach to someone who is, puffing cigarette smoke in our face? Of course, they were out of, kind of courtesy, telling him, Swamiji, is it okay? I'm smoking here. What Srila Prabhupada had to say? Think nothing of it. So he continued preaching like that. So even for ourselves, can we imagine ourselves in such a position? And Srila Prabhupada sacrificed Vrindavan, and he came here to endure all these troubles, so many troubles, non-stop pain. But he was doing that because he had that gopi bhav. And so this is real Krishna consciousness. And amazingly enough, he was enjoying that. Because if you love someone, then even pain you have to undergo for the pleasure of such person becomes the source of happiness. And so because devotees like Srila Prabhupada, they love Krishna so much, he didn't mind all these troubles. Very difficult situation. Right? So this is real gopi bhav, and this is the topmost devotion, which is exemplified Srimati Radharani, Bhishmadev, Srila Prabhupada. And finally, this is what brings the topmost happiness, because it brings topmost happiness to Krishna, and that's why devotees can go through those experiences for Krishna's pleasure. And without the sacrifices of all these devotees, for us, of course, it's the sacrifice of Srila Prabhupada, we wouldn't have such a wonderful Krishna conscious life. And Srila Prabhupada went through pain, and we got the gain. But if we want to really be happy in Krishna consciousness, then it's important to develop same kind of attitude like these great devotees. And we were talking in the beginning about the sale, right? And the greatest value is Krishna consciousness of such a level is available through these last 5 days of Kartik. Hare Krishna. Let's see if anyone has
one question.
Yes, Prabhu.
Maharaj, pertaining to the verse you discussed today, Srila Prabhupada used to quote this verse also from 3rd chapter. Yagyate karma andatra karma bandhana. Work has to perform a sacrifice to Lord Vishnu. Otherwise it's binding. So, coming back to Bhishma, could his sacrifice could be considered as a sacrifice to Lord Vishnu? It will be intriguing. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on this, how it could be related to as a sacrifice to Lord Vishnu?
Yes, sacrifice was to free this planet from demoniac forces at that particular moment. This was the required sacrifice. Of course, our sacrifice is different, right? Because we are chanting Hare Krishna mantra. That's our Sankirtan Yagya, and we want to free our own hearts from demoniac qualities and demoniac desires. That's our Yagya. But at that particular point, there were certain personalities which were so demoniac, and they were obstructing the development of Sanatan Dharma. So the Lord had to do that sacrifice through Arjuna, as we understand. And so Bhishmadev was very much instrumental, and he sacrificed everything for being in the role Krishna chose for him, and sticking to it to the very end. Another question, or we have to finish?
We take one more question.
Okay, Prabhu.
Maharaj, when you are telling about the sacrifice of Bhishmadev, practically if I see all the great devotees, Prabhupada or Prabhupada disciples, or so many devotees have done so much sacrifice to give Krishna consciousness to others. I think of myself, personally introspecting, I haven't done that sacrifice at all. And I have a long, long way to go to reach to that stage of Krishna consciousness. I don't know how many lifetime or what all I have to go through that sacrifice. So, can you maybe elaborate on this part?
Yes. What can we do to sacrifice for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord? So Krishna is explaining in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam when he glorifies the trees of Vrindavan, and then he says, Etavajjanma sophalyam dehinamiha dehishu pranayararthadiyavacha shriyan acharanam sada. That he says, this is the perfection of life, to always work for the benefit of all living entities, which is Krishna consciousness, of course. And in that process, one has to dedicate to that prana, artha, dhiya, vacha. 4 things, right? 4 aspects of sacrifice which are pleasing to the Lord. First one is prana, our life. Everyone has life, and everyone can dedicate his life to the service. At least some life can be dedicated to the service. Then, of course, some people, they not only have prana, but they also have artha, they have wealth. Prabhupada would say that if someone has intelligence, one will have money also. So, and as we know, money is the honey, right? Nobody wants to give it up. But we understand it is Lakshmi, and Lakshmi is meant to serve Narayan. So for us, it is Radharani, right? And Radharani is the original goddess of fortune. Many of you know that, even to construct this temple took a lot of funding, right? And that's like blood, right? Hard-earned wealth. But then when this hard-earned wealth is used in the service of the Lord, then it's very attractive, right? I heard that before there was a small temple room, hardly anyone was fitting in, so it was not very attractive. But now it's very beautiful, very large, nice facility, very attractive. You can invite anyone, right? You can invite Mayor of Baltimore, and he will happily come, right? In the old house, probably it was difficult, right? So yes, wealth should be used in the service of the Lord. And Thiya, some people, they are very good in planning, and they have very sharp intelligence. And they can organize things very, very nicely. And Srila Prabhupada was saying, to succeed in his mission, 2 things are very important. and that is organization and intelligence. So organizing skills are very important, and so the more we have devotees who can organize nice things, the more we can please the Lord. And then Vacha, of course, is speaking power, preaching Krishna consciousness, teaching. So that's also very important. So these four things have to be utilized for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord, whatever we have. Some people have all four. That's ideal, but at least something, as Prabhupada would say, something is better than nothing. And so the more we sacrifice, the more we gain, because Lord is never forgetting even slight service rendered by his devotees. And so by serving the Lord in any way, shape or form, it becomes our eternal gain, something which never becomes lost, even at the moment of death. Otherwise, materially, everything is lost, right? Like, there was one Hollywood movie I never watched, but I saw the title of it. And the title of the movie was Everything is Lost. I was thinking, this is a very smart title. Because this is material life, right? Everyone will have to go through that. Everything is lost. Sooner or later. But Krishna consciousness, everything is only gained. Because whatever we do for the pleasure of Guru and Krishna becomes our eternal blessing. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. I think it was so wonderful. Really appreciate that. It was so thought-provoking. I think it was the right thing we needed for the last 5 days of his Panchak. The devotees do a lot of austerities, and just listening to that, I think it really makes a resolve much stronger. So we're so grateful that you came, Maharaj, and appreciate that. Devotees have, anybody has questions, Maharaj will be kind enough. You can come and talk to him. Also wanted to now do another announcement. We are trying to modify